Hi, this is Eric van Zallicom from United Nature's Edible Garden. One of the funny things about life is that often the biggest decisions you've got to make only surface once you've already started your journey. And I thought, why not make this first video a really impactful one and share the 5 greatest revelations or lessons that I discovered over the last 25 years. These shaped how I garden, why I garden, and how I live my life. So although this channel is going to be filled with instructional videos, tips and tricks and garden hacks, etc., all of us are going to have to make this crucial decision of how we fit into our lives, what our human habitat's going to look like, and how we're going to go about gardening. So let's start this off with discussing the 5 most valuable lessons that might shape and guide you and save you a lot of time and energy before you even start putting a single plant in the ground. And the first thing we need to acknowledge is that plants aren't here just to grow in the sunshine. They actually change their environment. As you get to put plants together and you create communities of them, you create guilds, whether you're trying to make a beautiful looking garden or trying to create habitat or trying to create a veggie garden, as soon as you plant them there is they start changing their environment. Plants are part of communities in habitats that unfold over time, and you can clearly see this from bare soil that slowly gets colonized by mosses and algae, which in turn develop greater ecologies where grass can come in. When the grass arrives, it starts building up humus in the soils. It creates foliage coverage over the ground, which collects even more seeds. And slowly grasslands, environments, evolve from a grassland to a scrub or shrubland where the shrubs come out. As they grow with the grasses, they create new conditions. They change the soils, they capture warmth and moisture, and that's where the trees start emerging. So grassland slowly changed to scrubland, slowly changed to trees and woodland. And this process doesn't stop. It never stops. Each time a new plant comes into that environment, they add to the community and changing, and that is how rainforest eventually develops. Rainforest could have started off as a grassland that became shrubs, then a woodland. The woodland became denser as more species started growing in it, until the canopy completely closed and the foliage of the trees became the same as the shade house walls or your greenhouse walls, a closed environment with high humidity, maximizing moisture uptake, and more species were able to come in. They create niches and you get the snowball effect. And the same thing occurs in your veggie garden. It was a huge revelation to me. So that was the very first thing that changed my life. When I look at my garden now, I don't just see plants put in place to look good. I see plants that are actually changing it. They're creating my habitat for me, and we can use them to improve the way in which we grow our plants. In fact, you can put your plants on autopilot once you understand these processes, and your garden can become extremely low maintenance. Okay, this is number 2 on the list that I want to talk to you about. It's what's right here, underfoot, something that we totally glance over and we keep walking over that carries us from one place to the next. This is soil. Even here in my pathway, which is in the food forest, if I dig through it, you can see that it's spongy and it's rich, and there are filaments of fungi growing all over these little pieces of bark and mulch. The organics is slowly accumulating. I'm making sure that my pathways are increasing organics in the soil. Why am I mentioning this to you? And this is probably going to come as a surprise with me being a botanist and someone that focuses on ecology. It's very early on I learned that I'm not going to be growing plants. I'm going to be growing soil. My entire focus of everything I do is where the plants come from. It's the soil that they're rooted into, and it's the soil that injects all of the nutrients into the plant. You don't have to become good at growing plants to grow amazing plants. You need to become good at growing soil. Plants are simply the expression of the nutrients and the ecologies and the balances in your soil above the soil. So the roots are there. They're commingling with all of the little granules of sand or clay or humus or organics that have accumulated. Inside that structure, the sand is a structure, the clay is a structure, a mineral structure, the little air gaps. Those air gaps are where moisture collects. Moisture can't collect inside the sand particle, it collects in the spaces between it. And clay is simply sand that has been ground down and eroded over time to become a dust or a powder, and it compacts and the spaces between it are smaller. And that's why clay can get dry and pretty much stop moisture moving through it. Yet sand has an open structure and the moisture can move through it. And it's this space between the little pieces of soil where the life is injected. That's where the fungi grow. It's where the decomposing organic matter from plants collects and makes your soil spongy. When you start working on developing and growing soil, healthy soil that's filled with nutrients, filled with bacteria, filled with fungi, filled with organics, filled with moisture, to a point of balance, that is where your plants will thrive. Their roots don't grow into the sand, their roots grow into the gaps between the sand particles, between the clay particles, and that's where the life is. So a huge revelation for me was that plants are simply an expression of healthy soil. Here we are with the third lesson I learned, and this one was very profound for me personally. You know, so often in life, solutions are just so incredibly elegantly simple. We might labor for a long time and then finally realize that what we could have done such a long time ago wasn't really that significant and could have had a huge difference. This is where I learnt that there is a need to live in nature as opposed to on it. Now, it sounds very philosophical and it sounds very basic, but in all honesty, it's quite a central concept. If you're someone that views yourself as separate to nature, then you're always going to be struggling a bit and battling with it. It's you versus nature. It's you having to learn about nature. It's you having to try and work with nature. But if you insert yourself into nature, if you actually allow yourself just to relax a bit and to realize that your home is your habitat, that your body needs nature, it's in nature, it's part of nature. Your body is an ecology. We have an open gut, which means that our mouth passage where we eat food connects down to the inside of our body. We chew food and we swallow it. And that means that our mouth is also connected to the skin on the outside of our bodies. And so when we roll in nature, we touch and play with soils, we pick up plants and we get juices on us, we eat fruits, you have fun, you swim in streams. All of those things that are in those ecologies touch you on your skin. They colonize your skin. You've got bacteria and fungi, which are natural. They move across your skin into your mouth, between your teeth, down your throat. And then when you eat things, the passage continues on into your gut. You digest those. We know that we can't survive without bacteria in our gut. They do all the digesting for us. And then we pass all of those resources out for nature to process again. But this also is part of psychology and your life story. If you live in a home where you're separated from nature, it's easy to lose connection. And human wellness depends quite heavily on relationship with people or things or pets, but also relationship with your surroundings and your human habitat in nature. We have a family, we've got our son Aiden, and part of our parenting approach and our family approach is to teach him how to be in nature, how to allow himself to be in nature and to let it into his life. But we're also taking it further and teaching him how to grow his food, to understand the origins of his food and how he can control his environment. He can farm his home, he can choose what he decides to eat instead of what's on the shelf. But it's important for his health too. We already know that humans are hardwired to respond to nature. If you're in hospital and you've got access to a view or nature through your window, it can reduce your requirement for post-operation pain relief by up to 30%. It can reduce time you have to stay there. So our bodies respond very powerfully to it, and so does it with the way in which we eat. Nature, being in nature and learning not to just be on nature, slows you down. It gives you an opportunity to look, spend a bit more time listening, spend a bit more time tasting and appreciating. This is huge for me because I'm a serious thinker, and you'll notice with the things that I'm posting here that involve a lot of theory, a lot of science, a lot of deliberation and calculation. And my life lesson is probably to slow down, to breathe a bit deeper, to be in place within my habitat, to take it easy, and to sit back often and make sure that I appreciate, I have gratitude for what I'm doing, for the place I'm living and the nature that I'm part of, the nature that I'm creating for myself. And this channel is going to help us discover how to create your human habitat, a habitat that works for you, what your human nature is, your personal nature, the way in which you respond to the world, and how to dovetail the development of your garden to better suit that, to make it healthy for you, to make it sustainable, and to make it a pleasure. Okay, here we are with the fourth lesson, and this one's really interesting. In this case, I'm surrounded by plants from tropical rainforest in our garden, growing up a tree, philodendrons, unusual aroids, and so on. This revelation relates to how plants look. Plants evolve shapes and forms, and those shapes and forms have a huge life story behind them. It's a story of where they come from and why they exist, and the shape that they take on relates to the stresses and the type of environment that they come from. So when you're growing carrot and you see a thick carrot root that's orange or purple or white, then you can start looking at it a little bit closer and forget about what you see on the shop shelf, but think of it is that you're working with. A carrot's root is a root, and it's in the ground, and it's thickened, and it's filled with moisture and nutrients. Carrots are clearly evolved to try and survive periods of periods of drought. And once you start looking at and unfolding these backstories, these life stories of the plant, it empowers you to make really clever decisions about how you're going to garden, what you're going to grow, and how you go about growing them. When you think about plants, and even yourself, we evolved in ecologies, we evolved in an environment, and those environments have a lot of energy moving through them, whether it's food, whether it's water, whether it's things you've got to dig up to grab out of the ground like a potato, whether you've got to run away from predators. And we evolved the shapes and forms that we've got today to suit those, to survive, to become better at surviving and more efficient, to waste less. And so the shape and form that we take on is technically an expression of the processes that underlie them. For example, a carrot, once again, grows with this tiny tip at the base with a thickened end to it where the leaves exit the plant. That's important. It's a way to drill and burrow down into the ground, where the top, where most of the thickness in the carrot lies, is closest to the leaves, which are hungry and require nutrients. And so it makes sense to store most of your nutrients and your moisture closest to where it is needed, so you don't have to transport it far. Same reason why we've got legs and arms, so that we can reach and grab things, and we can also keep them away from our faces, our necks, our bellies, so that we don't get spike jabbed or bitten. And so we can look at them, and that's how our eyes evolved, to be able to see things from a distance, as opposed to everything having to be close to smell, like an ant uses its antenna. And the same with plants. These wide leaves over here have slight corrugations on them to protect them against wind, but also to capture more bounced light through the rainforest canopy. And so this lesson was about looking beyond aesthetics. So many people collect plants based on what they look like and then wonder why they struggle to keep them alive in their collections, because they didn't bother to understand the life story behind the plant, where it came from and how it evolved. Same with our vegetable growing, same with our edible. If you look at brassicas, many of them grow on cliff faces through the Mediterranean. Some of them do, some of them don't. Where do carrots grow? Are they dry soils? Are they free draining soils? Are they open soils? Would they be clay? Clay holds a lot of moisture, has a potential to, so probably not. So if you don't want to have skewed and squiffed carrots, look to where it came from. Understand that its soils were probably sandy and free draining and open and friable, allowing the carrot root to descend deeper and to find moisture. But those soils also dry out quicker. So it makes sense to start understanding ecologies and environment. Wrap your head around what you're growing and why. What do you like to eat? What don't you like to eat? And what kind of habitat do you need to set up? Not only for yourself, but for the kind of plants that are going to sustain you too. So that's a bit of a philosophical one. Look past what your eyes see and start seeing the stories and the truths behind things and the forms that they've evolved to do what they are genetically programmed to do. And to make life easier for you, design with processes, don't garden with plants. This leads us to the fifth lesson or revelation, and that's pests and diseases. The term pest is a purely human construct. In nature, pests don't exist. Pests are simply species that have grown to a certain population level or are preying on a plant that can cause ill health or simply go counter to your wishes. So it's purely something that's based on human analysis. In nature, every insect, every animal, every plant is eaten by something else. They form part of chains of events and trophic levels where each is a resource to the other. And so decomposition is a natural process of life. Whether decomposition starts after a plant is dead and it's put in your compost heap or lies on the ground, or whether it's based on an insect that's preying on it while it's alive, that decomposition is still occurring. If you eat unhealthy food and you live a very stressful life, your body goes into a slow process of decomposition, and so you create ill health. Now, slightly changing your understanding or your perspective on pests and diseases can have a profound impact on how you garden and how you live your life. Aphids, for example, prey on plants that aren't at optimum health. if a plant has sugar levels in its sap that are sufficiently high, in other words, the plant has enough moisture and the right nutrients to grow at optimum health, it means their sap is incredibly sugar rich for that particular species. Those healthy conditions are something that go counter to what species like aphids can tolerate. They haven't evolved the ability to digest and break down metabolized sugars that are beyond a certain concentration. And so these pests can rather be seen as indicator species, showing you when an imbalance in your local environment is present. If you haven't been offering consistent watering to a particular plant, your nutrient levels are slightly off, then your cell sap sugar content will reduce a bit. In the case of wind, this wind could be seen as a pest or a nuisance to my filming, but it's also invaluable from a different perspective because it shows you the kind of conditions that we garden in as well. We discussed that we are all part of habitats. We all live within it. And so if you got rid of every single pest or disease in your garden, you technically would be getting rid of the species and the other surrounding life forms that keep it in control as well. So changing this perspective has a dramatic impact on how you grow. If you go organic, it means that you're going to conserve life forms. If you use companion planting, it means you're going to bring in predators that can help to control and negate some of these pest populations. But the most important thing is that those controls don't solve pests, because pests don't need solving. Pests are key species that teach you, they indicate that you need to look a little bit deeper into how you're growing your plants to increase their sugar content, to get them to optimum health, and to make pests obsolete at that particular time in your environment. Just before I signed off on this filming session, I thought there was a sixth bonus little option here. I realized that gardens are one of the rare things in life that are capable of generating and providing you with compound interest. What that means is compound returns. You grow a plant from a seed and you grow to maturity and it produces 5 fruit. You eat 4 of those fruit and you keep 1. You collect the seed from it and you get 10 seed. You sow those 10 seed and you get 10 plants. They all grow and produce 5 fruit each. You've got 50 fruit. You eat 40 of them and you keep 10, and you keep the seed from those 10, and then you suddenly have more, and so the process unfolds. Gardens represent compound growth, growth upon growth upon growth potential. That's very rare to find in life and in nature. It's a little bit like investing and starting early, and over time you get compound interest that grows and grows, and after a while it takes on a life of its own and it produces its own resources that feed back into the system and provide great abundance. If you garden holistically, if you garden with processes and not just with plants, you can make this process of compound interest, compound growth, increase dramatically to the point where your garden doesn't require inputs anymore. So keep this in mind. It's a powerful thing. It's very promising, something to look forward to as you brush up on your skills, as you try and experiment new things, but you start integrating yourself into your habitat and finding interesting ways to improve the way in which you grow your plants, allowing them to grow themselves for you. Okay, there you have it. 5 lessons or revelations that had a great impact on my life, and the 6th one that is a very encouraging thought as well, even before you've started your journey, that you know your garden can give and grow and keep contributing towards what you're doing. If you like these kind of videos, please do subscribe. Please hit the bell icon at the bottom that will keep you informed, automated messages with menu updates, and please like the video. Also, your comments are of great value too. Anything you'd like to share, I'd love your perspectives. If you've got a different one to mine, if you've got new revelations you'd like to add to the conversation, and if there are any particular subjects you'd like to see brought up and discussed and shared on this channel. Thanks for your time, and I look forward to growing together.